Okay, this screencast is about setting up SmartOS to be a host for your guests. Um, so let's just dive right in. First thing, like the blog post says, you'll need an Intel CPU with the VT-X virtualization extensions. It doesn't work on AMD stuff, but if you go to the Intel page on this, you'll be able to take a look at all the processors it does work on, and that's pretty much most of them. The processor I'm setting it up on today is this 700, and wow, I don't know if that's a Camtasia thing or something, but it really doesn't like that. so, um, so let's move on though. SmartOS right now has a couple really, in my mind, pretty minor scripting issues and some of its configuration scripts that cause it to not set up some disks correctly. So let's just run through it and you'll get to see what it is. Would you like to continue with configuration? Yes. Pick my network address or network card, my IP address, so I've got one ready here I'm going to use for this example. And default gateway, I know what that is, and primary DNS server, like it shows there, Google's DNS. Use that if you want. I've got some internal caching DNS servers that I'm going to use, and here we go. It's going to ask me a bunch of disks. I've got a JBOD as well as 3 disks in the head. The 3 disks in the head are the controller 0, target 0, disk 0. So these 3 controller 0 disks, and then I've got controller 1 disks, which are my JBOD. 48 are showing up right now, but that's because there's redundant SAS paths to the JBOD. It's actually 24 disks, and you can't overlap these. But let me pick a disk here that I don't intend to use for anything ultimately, because I want to use the JBOD. I want to use parity RAID in the JBOD, and I can only pick one disk here because of, like I said, a bug in the installation script. So I'm going to pick a disk that I don't intend to later use. So if you don't have a disk, that's okay. If you intend to have spares later, you could use something that you later intend to use for a spare. And your configuration, nope, I don't want to edit it. I'm happy with what I've got here. Yeah, you could use a disk that you later intend to be a spare, but you need at least one disk to dedicate as a dump device. Your set of disks you want to be your later zones, and a disk to install to, which could be a disk you're later going to set aside as a spare disk for your zone cpool. So I have an entirely extra disk here, just the way this came out, but that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this now because this is going to take a good long while, and we'll come back to it. Alright, we're back. The system's rebooted. That took 5-10 minutes. I always forget to time out. But there we go. So now that we've got SmartOS running off of the ISO, I can SSH into the box. So I've already got this IP set up. Okay, just just a quick pause. Alright, we're into the box now. So if we do a zpool list, we'll see that we've got our zone zpool there installed to one disk, and we'll just run the status here, and there's the one disk. Now going over the little guide I've put together for you here. First, SmartOS ignores all the extra disks, so when it gives you that big long list, don't bother putting in more than one. Just put in one that you're not going to use. And we're going to skip the single disk configuration because, why would you install it to just a single disk? That's not going to provide great performance for your guest OSs. So let's scroll down now, and I show you how to juggle disks around if you if you didn't read this before you got to this point. And the first thing we're going to do is move the dump device. So right now, because it's on a single disk and dump supports that, if you run dump admd, you see that it's pointing to a zvol under zones dump. So ZFS list, zones dump. There it is right there. We don't want that. Because the dump device can't be spanned across multiple RAID with parity sets, and that's what we ultimately want to end up with. So we're going to have to dedicate a device to the dump device. So I'm just going to pick this last disk in the server here. So C0, these are my disks in the server, and T2, that's the third disk. So there, I moved over the dump. You'll notice up there, there's no swap device defined up here. So that's another issue. The SmartOS configuration has some code in there, but it's not properly getting called, and you don't end up with a swap device. So that's okay. We're going to fix that, but first we're going to go ahead and create our new pool. So now I've already got all the devices typed up. This is a lot of typing, so I'm just going to copy and paste. And this is going to take a minute for it to put all the disks together and put this pool together. So you see I've defined 3 spares here, and then I've got this JBOD with 24 drives. So 3 out of that leaves me with 21. So I've created 3 double parity RAID sets, and so that gives me 5 drives per set that I'll actually be able to use for data, just about. These are single terabyte drives, so that'll end up with about 15 gig. So if I do a zpool status now, I could see my zones pool, the single disk pool, and then this backup pool I've created. That's ultimately the pool I want to be running and move everything over to. So the next thing I'm going to do then is to snapshot my zones pool. So ZFS snapshot -r zones at backup. So the -r makes it recursive. I could say ZFS list -t snapshots, and you'll see that it recursively snapshotted all those things. So now I'll ZFS send that snapshot -r, so it's recursive again and moves everything over to ZFS receive -fd. Is going to force overwrite the file system that's created automatically at the root of backup. So it's not going to nest it under this backup file system, it's going to overwrite it. So it'll be just the same as what I already had here. And now I'm going to try destroying that zones pool. So zpool destroy, and this probably isn't going to work. Oh, it worked. Sometimes your stuff is already going to be mounted and you're not going to be able to destroy it. So if that happens to you, you can run a ZFS destroy -f R for recursive zones. It'll force unmount and destroy all the dependent file systems, and then you'll be able to destroy the pool. But it looks like I got lucky. So now I can zpool export my backup pool and zpool import my backup pool, and if I pass it another name, it'll call it that instead of backup. So this is a way to rename a pool, and I'm going to rename it to zones. So and here's an example of how to add a spare if you had picked a spare drive because you didn't have a drive you intended to go unused. Here's how you create the swap that goes missing, and right here the important bits are, turn off the caches, because if you've got the memory to cache, then you're better served by letting your applications use that memory so things don't go to swap in the first place than you are swapping, or caching rather, your swap device once you've pushed things out to it. So you don't want to cache your swap devices, turn the caches off, and you need the size of the swap to be equal to the amount of memory you have installed. On this box, it's a Dell R810 with 16 cores and 256 gig of RAM. Um, so my swap device is going to be 256. Um, and it's a great box, but I wouldn't recommend it for production use. It's kind of a special case kind of thing. We use it for staging servers where we don't need a lot of CPU power. If you wanted it for production, you have the memory bandwidth when you put 4 CPUs in it, so probably not a great idea. So probably best to stick with the R910, which is a 4U box. And yeah, because you have the memory when you use 4 CPUs, you don't want to use more than 2 CPUs in the R810. And it'd be kind of weird to buy a box with that much memory and only have 16 CPUs available for it. So now that we've got our cache in place, zpool list, that's pretty much it. We don't have anything else to do. Well, we've got this little bit of house cleaning. We moved that dump around, and then we replicated the dump across to our backup, which means it's here now in our new zones pool. So let's destroy it because it's not being used for anything. And we have that snapshot there. So actually, let's clean up the snapshots. CFS destroy -r zones at backup. That'll just remove all the snapshots, and then we can remove that dump file system. Finally, if we go and look at our console here, we're getting all kinds of errors because mounting stuff and blah blah blah. Let's just reboot it, make sure everything's okay. When it comes back up, it should automatically use the swap we created because its name is swap, and there's a hook for that. The dump device, we've already got on a dedicated device, and all the rest of our disks are where we want them to be. So that's pretty much it. Moving on from this then, you can go to the wiki article. It tells you how to create a new blank virtual machine in SmartOS, download an ISO, get Ubuntu or whatever you want running under your KVM guest, and you're ready to rock. Tweak it to your heart's content, clone it, look at my previous post on how to set up a guest, how to clone one quickly, and you'll be good to go. And that's it. Thanks.